My ex-husband and I divorced due to my mother-in-law's bullying. It happened less than a year into our marriage. We were colleagues at work and had a normal office romance, which smoothly led to marriage. The only abnormal thing was my mother-in-law. From the start of our marriage, she, doting on her only son, perceived me as an enemy. We had a shotgun wedding, which isn't so unusual now, but she yelled at me, "How shameful to do such things before marriage. You're like a cat in heat." I wasn't solely responsible for that. I was shocked by such a reaction at our first meeting, and it seemed unlikely that we would ever get along. It was incredibly rude. I expected my husband to firmly say something to his mother, but he just pacified her, saying, "Mom, I can't stay single forever." My mother-in-law muttered, "But, Michael, a woman who gets pregnant before marriage will definitely cheat." Again, I wasn't the only one who made the baby. Frustrated, I thought I had to be the adult and remained silent. That's ridiculous. Jennifer is head over heels in love with me. Why didn't he deny it properly? My husband's reaction to the terrible accusation that I would cheat even before our marriage was absurd. And, as I keep saying, I wasn't the only one who made the baby. Why should I be the only one blamed? My husband was still trying to calm his mother, but I had lost all interest in listening to her. What a terrible mother-in-law. But I had my husband's baby in my belly, so I couldn't just leave. This was how my short married life began. Before our marriage, my husband lived at home. We agreed to live together after the wedding. However, my mother-in-law made a fuss, saying, "What are you talking about? Michael's home is here." "All right, if that's what you say, Mom." My husband easily changed our plans and decided we would live together, without even asking for my consent. Is he such a mama's boy? I thought he was kind, but he just lacked initiative. He was completely under his mother's thumb, and worst of all, he ignored her bullying me. For instance, right after we started living together. After finishing work and household chores, I was about to take the bath, running the hot water. When I opened the bathroom door, something was off. I checked the temperature with my hand. "What is this? Cold water." My mother-in-law had deliberately replaced the hot water with cold. It was winter, and the bathroom felt chilly, so I noticed right away, but it was subtly infuriating. What a waste of water, and I was pregnant. What if something happened to the baby in my belly? Even if she resented me for taking her son, the baby was still her beloved son's child. I was disappointed and scared of her blatant hostility. From then on, whenever she saw me, she'd say, "Why don't you go back to your parents' house?" And never come back. Or, "What on earth did my Michael see in you?" Hearing this day after day, I grew increasingly tired. At first, I tried to stay positive, thinking, boys are their mother's little lovers, right? She just hasn't let go yet. She'll come to accept me eventually. But my mother-in-law never changed, and my husband didn't help. Why did I have to endure this alone? I cried in secret many times. 2 months passed, and a critical incident occurred. Just before I was about to go on maternity leave, I had to work overtime temporarily to adjust and hand over my work. That day, I was going to be home after 8 p.m. "I won't be able to make dinner tonight, sorry." When I texted my husband, he replied, "Okay." So, I stayed late at work. Despite my efforts to finish work quickly and my exhaustion from being pregnant, when I returned home, I noticed a delicious smell. Michael was alone in the living room, as his mother had already retired to her room. "I'm home. Did you cook something, honey? Welcome back." No, it was Mom who cooked everything. It was delicious. Hearing my husband speak so cheerfully, I went to the kitchen to find something to eat. But no matter how much I searched, there was nothing. There were dirty dishes for two and empty pots and pans, but no food. "Isn't there anything for me?" When I asked my husband, he answered indifferently, "Seems like there isn't." Why not? Maybe because Mom didn't cook it. What? I always cook for her, don't I? Why? Since we moved in, I had been preparing breakfast and dinner, including for my mother-in-law. She would eat it, complaining about the taste being too strong or too mild. She's upset, claiming a daughter-in-law has no right to come home later than her husband because of work. She also said, "You're a failure as a wife for not having any prepared meals." My husband almost blamed me. Isn't that a bit harsh? It was predictable that my mother-in-law wouldn't cook just for me, given her past behavior. She had always been confrontational from the beginning. The problem was my husband. Did he not think anything of it? Huh? Think what? Apparently, he didn't. Weren't you going to prepare something for me? Why should I? Do I really need to explain? Your wife comes home tired and there's no dinner ready? I believe marriage requires effort from both sides. Why do I have to be the only one making sacrifices? Well, it's your fault for coming home late. If you don't like it, come home earlier and cook. Fine, whatever. My husband was too self-centered to reason with. We both worked at the same company and earned almost the same salary. Why should I be the only one doing household chores and working? It would be nice if he cooked once in a while. Like mother-in-law, like son. I don't think either of them will ever change. I decided to divorce. I planned to go back to my parents' house for the birth, so I just stayed there. My parents were furious when they heard the story. My father said, "You don't ever have to go back there." We sent our only daughter off with tears, not for a man like that. We can't give our precious daughter and grandchild to him. When I called my husband to inform him I had arrived at my parents' house, I told him, I want a divorce. He hesitated at first, but soon agreed, saying, "Mom says it's better to divorce." Even then, he was under his mother's thumb. I was astounded, but I still felt guilty about taking the child away from him and raising our child without a father. So when our son was born, I texted him, "Our son is born," with a photo, but he ignored it. After a while, he replied, "Mom says we don't need custody, so you don't have to send photos." Unbelievable. No love for his son, no gratitude for a newborn. I regretted ever loving this man. I can't even remember why I married him. In the end, we settled on no alimony, but he agreed to pay $200 a month in child support. However, he only transferred the money for the first 6 months. Honestly, even though I'm on parental leave now, I'll have a decent income once I return to full-time work. I can send my son to college without living extravagantly. The thought of contacting my ex-husband just for the $200 monthly child support is unpleasant. After waiting about 3 months and confirming that the payments had completely stopped, I couldn't believe he would forget to pay such a small amount. Reluctantly, I contacted my ex-husband. "Hello, about the child support." As I started talking, my ex-husband said, "I've been waiting for your call. Can we meet so I can give it to you directly?" I never thought he would deliberately not pay the child support to make me contact him. "If you want to see your son, maybe on the weekend." I thought he wanted to see our son, but he shockingly suggested, "No, just the two of us, how about staying somewhere overnight?" Stay overnight somewhere? I'm with a son not yet a year old? What on earth was he thinking? Completely absurd. You left me not because you hated me, but because of Mom, right? So, if we meet outside, it should be fine. His idea was just creepy. His mother's bullying was one reason, but if that was all, we could have lived separately. I divorced him because he was utterly unreliable and I lost all affection for him. I never thought he could be this delusional. Why didn't I see his red flags before? No way. Just transfer the child support. I said just that and hung up, then blocked his number. Even if he doesn't transfer the money again, I don't want to call him. I decided to earn the $200 a month myself. After returning from parental leave, I got transferred to a branch office so I wouldn't have to see my ex-husband at the same company. And I worked hard to raise my son. I think it was about 7 years after the divorce. I received a call from an unknown number. Thinking it was work, I answered, and it was my ex-husband. "Hey, we divorced because of my mom, right? She's been hospitalized. Won't you come back?" No. You're wrong. We divorced because I couldn't handle you, not just your mother. Don't call me ever again. I hung up and quickly blocked that number too. My ex-husband's cluelessness was astounding. I felt sure that divorcing him was the right decision. Years passed, and it must have been about 10 years since the divorce. I had almost forgotten about my ex-husband when an unknown number called. I hadn't changed my phone number since it was also for work. I briefly thought of my ex-husband but figured it was fine since I had blocked him. To my surprise, it was my ex-husband, calling to say, "My mom passed away. Will you come to the funeral?" I'm sorry to hear that, but I can't attend the funeral. Why should I go to the funeral of someone who tormented me? It was incomprehensible. Why not? Mom is gone now. We're getting back together, so you should come. The relatives should meet you at this opportunity. My ex-husband kept making assumptions, but I cut him off, saying, "No, no, no. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Listen, I absolutely won't attend the funeral, and there's no chance of us getting back together, even if the world turns upside down." I hung up and, of course, blocked this number too. I considered sending a condolence card as a mature gesture and consulted my mother, but my father, overhearing, strongly opposed it, saying, "Absolutely not." So, I did nothing, and about a week passed. Suddenly, my ex-husband showed up at my house. It was our first encounter in 10 years. "It's been a while, Jennifer. I've come to pick you up." He even brought a bouquet, as if trying to be polite. No, I refuse. I was scared because the conversation was just not getting through to him. Fortunately, my son was not home as he was at soccer club practice. "We have a lot to catch up on, let's have some tea." My ex-husband tried to enter the house uninvited, but I had no intention of letting him in. "Please leave." "What's this, Jennifer, a pushy salesperson?" As my ex-husband and I argued at the entrance, my father appeared. "Michael, how dare you step foot on our threshold? Get out of here." Feeling stronger with my father's support, I firmly told my ex-husband, "We're divorced, and we are strangers now. There's no picking up here, this is my home. I absolutely don't want to get back together with you. Then, how about we start over as lovers? Things were good when we were dating, right? No, it's physically impossible for me now." My ex-husband was persistent, but the situation was completely different from back then. "Look, when we were married, you never protected me from your mother and never did anything for me. After the divorce, you didn't pay child support and never visited your son. How could you possibly think I would get back with you? I can't understand your thought process at all. Leave before I call the police." I thought that would be enough, but then my ex-husband said after a pause, "Then who will take care of me?" "What?" My father and I exchanged glances, utterly baffled. "It's my care. Mom's gone now, so you should do it. And it's been a while since we've been intimate at night." He seemed a bit embarrassed towards the end. I felt my skin crawl. Realizing how truly creepy it was, I was speechless. Seeing me silent, my father got angry. "Don't joke around. What do you think my daughter is?" "Please don't get angry, Dad," my ex-husband said nervously. "Enough. I don't want to be called a dad by someone like you. We're strangers. This is too disgusting to talk about." "Get out," my father exclaimed. "No, I came to pick up my wife." My ex-husband stubbornly insisted. Then, the sound of a police car siren began to be heard. A patrol car approached rapidly and stopped abruptly in front of our house. The neighbors started to gather, wondering what was happening. "You see, Jennifer, since we're getting nowhere, I called the police," my mother said, appearing from inside with a phone in her hand. "Good job," my father exclaimed with joy. The police officers took my ex-husband away, and I felt a huge sense of relief. Later, I hired a lawyer. We obtained a restraining order against my ex-husband from the court. It's best to keep someone so incomprehensibly irrational at a distance. My ex-husband's actions even became known at his company, and he was transferred to a remote island in the spring personnel changes. Apparently, a company personnel officer lived in our neighborhood and reported his behavior to the HR department. My parents' house was due for rebuilding, and we decided to move to an area with a strong soccer club for my son. This would completely sever our ties with my ex-husband. My son, who has grown up without his father, is cherished many times over by my parents and me. He's growing up healthy and robust. We're all looking forward to watching his next soccer match as a family. You're not my family now. Don't ever set foot in our house again. I was yelled at by my father and, supported by my soon-to-be husband, Thomas, I left my childhood home in tears. It was right after I had graduated from high school. My name is Amy. I'm a 36-year-old farmer. This year marks 18 years since I left my childhood home. As I think about how the time I've spent in my chosen life is now longer than the time I spent at my childhood home, I can't help but feel sentimental. My childhood home was in the city, my father was a salaried worker and my mother was a homemaker. In our family of 4, including my parents and my brother, who's close in age, my parents always clearly favored my brother as the heir. Even things like side dishes at dinner or birthday presents were always more lavish for my brother. He would lord it over me, thinking he was better, and I was always the target of his meanness. I remember feeling lonely and crying out, "Look at me, too." But my parents never changed, so I eventually gave up. The turning point in my life came in the summer of my junior year of high school. My brother, who's close in age, was preparing for college entrance exams, aiming for a top university. But he was always on edge due to poor mock exam results, often taking it out on me. My parents treated him with kid gloves, pushing household chores on me to prevent me from having time to study. I had better grades than my brother, so in a bid to improve his mood, my parents even tried to sabotage my grades. It made no sense to me. That's when I heard about an agricultural internship program from Mr. Johnson. In my high school, students who were interested could participate in a 2-night, 3-day agricultural internship. Staying with a host family, we would harvest vegetables and cook meals together, immersing ourselves in country life. Struggling with my home life, I decided to take part. But my father was adamantly against it, saying, "Farming is for idiots who can't hold down a regular job." My mother mocked me, "Why would you want to get dirty and smelly doing physical labor?" Despite their opposition, I used my own savings to sign up. It was the first time I ever stood up to my parents. And it was the right decision. I was starving for family love, and it turned out to be a truly wonderful experience. Breathing the fresh country air and working felt new and exciting, and I experienced the warmth of a family. The eldest son of the host family, a year older than me, was named Thomas, the same age as my brother. At first, I was wary of him just because he was older, but Thomas was nothing like my brother. Kind yet firm, he got along well with his parents and was nice to me too. His parents were also incredibly kind, and when I left after those 3 days, I cried my heart out. Auntie cried with me, saying, "Come back anytime." I promised, I will definitely come back. Uncle and Auntie didn't use their cell phones much, so I began writing them letters frequently. Soon, the responses started coming more from Thomas, their eldest son, and our correspondence turned into something like a diary exchange, eventually leading us to start dating. It was a pure long-distance relationship, we hadn't even kissed. After my brother failed to get into his first-choice national university and ended up in a third-rate private college, I became a high school senior facing my own college entrance exams. However, my parents pressured me, saying, "Don't go to college, just get a job instead." Their reasoning was that women don't need an education. The real reason, I suspect, was that they didn't want me attending a better university than my brother. Since the agricultural internship, I had developed a dream of becoming a farmer. I could become a farmer without going to college, but since Thomas was a college student in the city, I wanted to study agriculture at university and aim for new farming methods. With clear goals and aspirations, I studied hard every day, despite the obstacles from my parents and brother. But when I actually got accepted into a university, my father was furious, asking, "How dare you, a girl, think of going to a better university than your brother?" My mother said, "We don't have money for you. Your brother needs it, so you should work and bring money home." Desperate and in despair, I had a huge argument with my parents and ended up cutting ties with them. Thomas came to pick me up from home, and his parents, now my in-laws, offered to help with my college expenses. I went to college and 4 years later, married Thomas. Throughout my university years, I never contacted my parents or brother, but as my in-laws said, "You should at least inform them about your marriage." We visited my childhood home for the first time in 4 years. It wasn't until the summer approached that we could go for the greetings, as we were busy with graduation and rice planting. Both my in-laws, my husband, and I all had faces tanned to a deep brown from the sun. Then, my parents and brother openly mocked us. My mother said disdainfully, "Excuse me, but how old are you? To be working so hard that you're that tanned, you must be quite poor." I was so embarrassed. "Stop it, Mom," I pleaded in a quiet voice, but she pretended not to hear. My brother, grinning, taunted, "Smart people like me earn money with brain work, not primitive labor. Being able to do only such work is proof of low intelligence." I was shocked, and the usually gentle smiles of my in-laws froze. My husband firmly declared, "With all due respect, we take pride in our farming." My father laughed condescendingly and said to me, "Let me tell you, from now on, you are not our family. You're marrying a poor farmer who has to work hard for a living. We'll treat you as if you don't exist. Don't come asking us for money. We don't want to see you anymore." I was already disowned at 18, so this wasn't new to me. Still, we tried to do the right thing. The sympathetic looks from my caring in-laws and husband were hard to bear. On the way home, quietly crying, I resolved to forget my biological family's existence. And now, 18 years have passed. The emotional scars had healed, I had 2 children, and was living busy yet fulfilling days. I had almost completely erased my parents and brother from my memory when, suddenly, a cousin told me my brother was getting married. My cousin and I had always been close, we kept in touch even after my marriage. Once, I sent her some rice we had harvested, and she liked it so much she became a regular customer. So, we still kept in touch, chatting on the phone every few months. "We'll see each other at the wedding after a long time," she said. I hadn't heard anything about my brother getting married from either my parents or him. Well, being estranged, I wouldn't know. The family is also building a new duplex house. "I wonder if it's finished yet," she mentioned. Apparently, my parents and brother, along with his soon-to-be wife, were moving. My cousin knew about my estrangement from my parents, but thought I would still show up for weddings and funerals. After hanging up, I impulsively called my mother's cell phone. But a mechanical voice said, "This number is no longer in use." The same happened when I called my father. Perhaps they changed their numbers. I didn't know my brother's number, so I couldn't call him. With trembling fingers, I dialed our home number. It connected. I waited nervously for someone to pick up. "Hello?" It was my brother. "Brother? It's Amy. I heard you're getting married and moving." As I hesitated about what to say, intending to offer congratulations, my brother interrupted me. "You don't need to know. You're just a farmer, a stranger. Don't call me," he yelled and hung up. In panic, I called again, but he had already blocked my number. It was cruel. No matter how much he disliked me, it hurt to be rejected like this by family. Seeing how upset I was, my husband asked worriedly, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Tears I had been holding back fell. After I told them what happened, my husband and in-laws were as angry as if it had happened to them. "You belong here with us, Amy. Your family is right here," my mother-in-law said, comforting me as my tears wouldn't stop. I wished she had been my real mother. She, more than my biological mother, truly cared for me. My father-in-law also consoled me, saying, "You're happy now, that's what matters. Don't let it hurt you. Remember, the one who laughs last wins." My husband said, "Let's take them as a lesson of what not to be." Even our children, not fully understanding, hugged me tightly. Thank you, everyone. I hadn't been blessed with a biological family, but realizing how happy I am now, I felt a warmth in my heart. However, things took another turn when my business was featured on a national TV network. Originally, my in-laws were already substantial rice farmers. They also had a wide variety of vegetables and fruit, but there was always an excess of produce that didn't meet the standards. Having studied food business in college, I focused on how to sell all our produce without waste. I started processing slightly damaged fruits and vegetables into jams, juices, pickles, etc., and began selling them online. With the support of the local agricultural cooperative, my venture was a huge success. It was very popular with mothers wanting to feed their children safe, domestic produce, and with elderly people longing for nostalgic pickles. I built up the company with other young women who had married into farming families and youths who were struggling to find work. Now, it's grown into a company with an annual revenue of $5 million, and its success story was featured in a documentary. After the TV broadcast, there was a huge reaction to how much I was earning, and I received calls from various people. Calls for orders, inquiries, business deals, and interview requests flooded in, not only to the company phone but also to my personal cell phone, which rang incessantly. So, when an unknown number called, I answered, and it turned out to be my brother. National TV coverage indeed. He must have found out about my success. Without much preamble, he said, "I'm thinking of starting a business. Lend me some money." What? No way. I replied, feeling an instinctive aversion, and hung up coldly. But then he called again. "Just give me the money. If you, a mere farmer, can start a business and make money, then I'll definitely succeed." He was adamant and arrogant. His attitude wasn't that of someone looking to borrow money, and I wondered where such confidence came from. He was the one who had called me a stranger, a mere farmer. I didn't respond to his demands but asked something I had been curious about. "Hey, who decided not to tell me about the house move?" "What?" "That was my decision, of course. My wife, being a city woman, was quick to agree to cut ties with you. So, that was it." I hung up without hearing more and blocked his number. My brother's wife, whom I had never met, seemed to share the same mindset as my brother and parents. Since my brother had seen the TV show, my parents might have watched it too. A few hours later, thinking this, I received a call from an unknown number. It was my father. "Why are you the president? Did you steal a man's job?" he asked. I replied, "Well, Thomas and my father-in-law are working in the agricultural corporation too. In fact, larger farms benefit from being incorporated due to certain systems and advantages. My father-in-law was the head of the local agricultural cooperative, and Thomas had incorporated his family's share, and now he is its president." My father seemed to accept my explanation but then said, "Don't be so cold. Why haven't you contacted us?" Astonished, I replied, "You disowned me, remember?" I'm hanging up now, and hung up, blocking him too. Minutes later, my mother called. "Why aren't you giving your brother money? You make $5 million a year, right? Send us money. We're your real family. Have you forgotten the favor of raising you? Give us at least $3 million, or half of that." My mother was more aggressive than anyone in her demands. I mean, the $5 million is the total revenue of the company. After expenses and paying the employees, there's hardly anything left for my salary, I said, exaggerating a bit. "Exaggerating a bit," my mother quickly countered. "Nonsense. That can't be true." I was getting irritated. It was shameful how she kept demanding money. Even if I had the money, I wouldn't send any. We're strangers, after all. With that, I ended the call and, of course, blocked her number too. I thought this would finally sever all ties, but I was too optimistic. To my surprise, my parents and brother, along with his wife whom I was meeting for the first time, showed up uninvited at my in-laws' house. My father said, "Hey, Amy. I'm lifting your disownment." I was dumbfounded, wondering if they were really that desperate for money. My mother-in-law expressed her displeasure, saying, "What do you people think you're doing?" My father-in-law stood silently next to her, glaring at my parents, and the surrounding employees gathered, looking at my parents with disbelief. Even my brother seemed to realize he wasn't welcome. He arrogantly said, "We are the true family with blood ties. We have the right to claim the money we've earned." The woman who seemed to be my brother's wife was nodding in agreement. I was infuriated. I retorted, "No way. Even if we share blood, there was never any emotional connection. You discarded me like a stranger." The pain of being abandoned by my own family resurfaced, and I felt tears welling up again. Then my husband arrived and stood by my side. He defended me, saying, "Amy is now part of our family. We don't need your disownment lifted to live happily. Please leave." He defended me and spoke up firmly. The employees also chimed in, criticizing my parents with comments like, "That's right. What are they thinking? So rude." I felt surrounded by allies. Realizing this was where I belonged, I was truly happy. My brother, in anger, shouted, "Shut up, you country bumpkins. You're probably all uneducated trash. Just obey us." My husband coolly revealed, well, actually, both my father and I graduated from the University of Nebraska. And Amy graduated from a renowned agricultural college. My brother, shocked, exclaimed, what? Your top university graduates and you chose farming? For my brother, who only had a degree from a third-rate private university, his education was his only pride. And he never expected to be outdone in this aspect. My husband calmly responded, agriculture is a respectable profession. We apply what we learned at university effectively. I couldn't help but burst into laughter at this. I teased, big brother, you're losing to Thomas in every way. This lightened my mood considerably. Maybe I had been too afraid of my brother and parents. I want to make this clear since it's the last time, I am now a stranger to you. I paused there for a moment. Then, deliberately changing to a more formal tone, I continued, therefore, as a stranger, I cannot lend or give you money. Please leave. If you cause a commotion or become violent, I will call the police and pursue legal action. With these words, I firmly declared my disconnection from them. My in-laws and husband subtly moved closer, protecting me from any harm my family might cause. I was touched by how much they cared for me. The employees also shouted at my parents, yelling, get out of here now, and go home. My parents, brother, and his wife glared at us hatefully but couldn't say anything more and left dejectedly. Later, I heard from a cousin that my brother and parents, seeking quick riches, had started a business with borrowed money, not from me. But their arrogance led to a huge failure. They were on the brink of bankruptcy. But they're strangers now, and I have no intention of getting involved. As for me, work is going well, and I'm surrounded by a true family, my respectful in-laws, loving husband, and adorable children. Savoring the happiness in my life, I cherish each day.